I'm Scott Donaldson, NAIS Member Engagement Director. This is NAIS Member Voices, The Conversation. The Conversation is a dialogue between two colleagues from the NAIS community and comes to us from the team at Independent School Magazine. In this episode, two longtime thought partners, Jennifer Wallace, author of Never Enough, and Dr. Christie Kinsey, who has just wrapped up 10 years as head of school at the Hewitt School in New York City and who is the new head of school at Charlotte Country Day School in North Carolina, discuss what it means for educators to truly matter. They explore how school leaders can foster a culture where teachers feel seen, supported, and valued, and why that sense of mattering is foundational not only to teacher resilience, but to student success and thriving school communities. Be sure to listen to the full episode and then stick around for some exciting news about the future of the podcast at the end. Okay, here's the episode.
All right, Tara, I'm so happy to be here with you. Hold on, I'm going to pull up our notes.
Same. Hello to our colleagues at NAIS.
Hello, thanks for this opportunity.
Yeah, we're excited. Any chance I have to talk with you, Jenny?
I feel the same way, Tara. I feel like this is just one of many conversations we have had about this very topic.
Exactly. So this is like basically recording the continuation of a multi-year conversation we've been having about this topic.
Exactly. We have been talking about this since I think we first met. And
on my Twitter. Oh, is that how you came?
I think I came to you on Twitter.
Oh gosh.
What you were saying was resonating so much with me. So I think that's how we first connected. And then we had 1 million people in
common.
Colleagues in common.
I'm happy to be here with you.
I'm happy to be here with you. Okay. I thought, Tara, that we would start by doing a quick zoom out. The pandemic revealed the extraordinary resilience of teachers and school leaders and the toll that these compounding pressures are taking on their well-being. Now that schools are settling into familiar routines, I've noticed in my conversations around the country that educators are still carrying a lot. They are taking on more responsibilities, managing bigger emotional needs of their students and families, and trying to meet expectations that just keep climbing. There was a Gallup poll that found K through 12 employees report the highest burnout rate of any professional group in the US, with 44% describing themselves as always or very often burnt out. This is tragic. These numbers tell a story of exhaustion and disengagement. So, Tara, let's start here. What are some of the challenges that you and other school leaders are seeing in schools today?
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. Whenever someone I meet finds out that I worked in and led a school through the pandemic, I get this almost universal response of sympathy and, oh, that must have been so hard. Oh, and although I will absolutely be the first to admit that I would never, you and I were just talking about it before we hit record, I would never want to go back to those pandemic years. They were so challenging for countless reasons. I have begun to wonder if the long tail of the pandemic's aftermath is proving just as, indeed, if not more challenging for those of us who are still working in schools today. And I've been thinking a lot about the late Sir Ken Robinson's very well-known speech in which he says, there is no school that is better than its teachers. And we're having this conversation today at a moment when the teachers are not okay. And we've got to do something about it. And I just opened up and read the 8th annual Teacher Wellbeing Index report published by Education Support out of the UK that advocates for the mental health of teachers and education staff. And the report shows alarmingly high levels of stress and very low levels of well-being in the teaching profession. And specifically, the report highlights, which really resonated with those of us in schools, the report highlights that an increase in challenging student behavior paired with an increase in parent complaints, that combination has served to negatively affect educators' mental health and well-being. And naturally, teachers, of course they're looking to school leaders for relief from what feels like just a crushing workload because of the elevated levels of friction and conflict and emotional labor. And actually, last week at a faculty meeting, I shared some of the statistics on the low levels of educator well-being, just in an attempt to normalize just how hard being an educator is right now, just so that teachers and staff members didn't know that, didn't feel like that it was just them, or that they were doing something that wasn't more universally experienced. And while I think we've been inundated with concerns about the pandemic's impact on the learning and well-being of children, I just don't think we're talking enough about the pandemic's impact on the morale and well-being of parents and educators. And I think that you have some thoughts about that.
I have so many thoughts about that. I love that you were validating for the teachers this experience by normalizing it, taking away the shame, because with the shame, you can't address it. I heard this over and over again on my interviews for Never Enough, and now for my next book on mattering in adults, that adult resilience is at an all-time low. And so the question is, how can we create these school environments, this ecosystem that actively supports educators' well-being and helps them reconnect with their sense of purpose? Because if we don't, the ripple effects will extend far beyond the classroom.
I really like that word ecosystem, because it suggests that it's, you start changing one thing over here and another thing in a completely different part of the system starts changing too, because it's really, really alive and dynamic and moving around. But, when I think about that question, Jenny, I go back to the panel that our school hosted a few years ago that you were on the mental health of adolescents, that was sponsored by Harvard's Making Caring Common. And you summarized the research in a way that I will never forget. And I say to parents and teachers all the time, which is the resilience of children depends on the resilience of the adults in their lives. And of course, that includes the teachers and the parents, right? And the resilience of adults depends on the quality of their closest relationships. And there is just nothing stickier for me than that concept. And so can you expand on that in relation to the concept of school culture, or the ecosystem, or the environmental conditions within a school community?
Yeah, as I was researching Never Enough, the one thing that really struck out for me was how often educators and parents talked about how they didn't feel like they mattered to themselves. I heard this from firefighters that I interviewed, who you would think, right, that they would know their purpose. It's so,
Yeah.
but they were disconnected from their impact. They did not know how their efforts were making an impact in the community. I heard it from doctors who worked in major medical centers, who felt crushed by a system and felt like complicit cogs in the wheel of insurance companies. And I heard it with teachers. I heard it with educators. Educators in high achieving schools talked about how they sometimes felt pitted against parents, and that parents saw them as gatekeepers of their kids' futures, where they would get into college. Heads of schools talked about being tasked with solving the world's biggest issues that even we as a society can't solve, but somehow they're supposed to solve them in their memos to families. Resilience research and my research for Never Enough really underscored this idea that if we want to address the mental health and resilience of young people, we need to go upstream and focus on building up the support systems and resilience of the adults in their lives.
Oh my gosh, I love that concept of needing to go upstream. And it's in some ways to this kind of ecosystem metaphor, right? It's all connected and you have to go to the source, right? So in Never Enough, which is a book I absolutely loved and recommend widely, you wrote about mattering as it relates to this toxic achievement pressure that makes so many adolescents unwell, and how mattering can act as this kind of protective shield for kids in higher pressure environments that are so many of our independent schools, represent. And I think many people, certainly many educators, can understand how we can help our youth feel a sense of mattering at school and at home. I wonder about the adults and what are those upstream solutions? And maybe you could talk a little bit about mattering generally for people who haven't yet read your book.
Yeah, so mattering was first conceptualized by Morris Rosenberg in the 1980s, and he defined it as the universal human need we all have to feel significant and valued in the world. Mattering not only requires us to feel valued, but also to have the opportunity to add meaningful value
Mm,
back to the world.
mm,
It's
mm,
more than a feeling, it's part of
mm.
our evolutionary inheritance. Mattering to the group meant protection and safety and survival. Mattering, researchers find, is as foundational to our health as food and water.
Wow.
Just like hunger singles a need for nourishment, the yearning, the longing to matter reflects a fundamental human need for connection, belonging, and purpose. So our mattering, unfortunately, has eroded. And many factors have played into this, these huge macroeconomic forces, geopolitical trends, social trends towards individualism. All of these things are slowly eroding our sense of mattering.
I mean, Jenny, even think about AI.
Exactly.
And
AI is now on
ChatGPT.
the scene. Exactly. What is it going to mean when
Yeah.
jobs can be done by AI? Where does
Yeah.
that leave us? We are humans and
Yeah.
we are meant to matter and to add value. So we have to be really mindful of protecting mattering. That is
Mm,
what makes us human. That is what separates us from AI, is this
mm,
instinctual need to matter.
mm.
So what does feeling like you matter or don't matter look like in everyday life? So it could mean being shut down or ignored at work, or somebody else taking credit for your ideas, or, making somebody feel like they matter could be as simple as letting someone move in front of you in a line in the supermarket because they look stressed out, or letting them merge in front of you in traffic. When adults feel unvalued or invisible, they withdraw, they disconnect, and this trickles down to our children. And so, what I've said before, and I'll say it again a million times, how can we, in this modern world where our mattering is constantly being eroded, how can we expect adults to be fully present for children and to have the bandwidth to show up day in and day out as the first responders to their students and children's struggles when they themselves feel unseen, unsupported, and undervalued?
Goodness. Well, that's the question of certainly the decade for sure. So why don't we actually go into that for a bit? Let's talk about how we can build up educators' sense of mattering. And I will actually quote one of my former Hewitt colleagues, Dr. Sarah Odell, who said that teacher working conditions are students' learning conditions. And I quite like that concept. It's very sticky. So just how do people, and specific to this conversation, how do the teachers and staff feel when they cross the threshold of the front door of our school every morning? Do they feel that they matter, that what they do matters, that how they show up matters, that they're having a positive impact on the lives of others, our school, our world, that their skills, their humanity, that it's seen, it's honored, it's valued? That for me, this is the work of the highest order. But it's not in anyone's job description, is it? I mean, I think a lot of people, just as an aside, a lot of people, once so what does a head of school do?
Mhm.
And I'll say, it's kind of like we're climate control. Like,
Mhm.
how does that, we're the kind of thermostat. It's like, how does it feel when you walk in this door?
Yes.
Does it
Yeah.
feel good? Do you feel like people care? Do you feel like people know what you do, how you contribute? Or are you just, would anyone know if you didn't show up?
Right.
Yeah, no, I think that sometimes people don't know because that's not a job description, like climate control. But I do think that it really does in some ways start from the top. And thinking about ways for that leadership shadow to be really long. How do you spread that kind of good feeling when people walk in the door? I think it really does start at the top.
I love that idea about climate control. I mean, think about if you can create a climate where adults can go 8, 10, 12 hours a day and feel seen and valued
Yep.
and their mattering is filled up, they can then leave at the end of the day and show up fully for their children, for other members of their community, for the elderly parents they may be caring for,
Yeah.
the neighbor who needs them. So the work of work, the setting that climate has such a profound ripple effect on the
Mhm.
rest of the world.
That's such an interesting concept.
So, what I love about mattering is how actionable it is, that you don't need a PhD. It's very instinctual. It's
Mhm.
very to show people that they matter. So if you want somebody to feel like they belong, recognize their work, thank them for it, tell them explicitly how much you value them, how important they are, how much you depend on them, and how much they'd be missed if they weren't there. I found it helpful to remember this acronym in my own head, SAID, which captures the core ingredients of mattering. So we all need to feel significant, appreciated, invested in, and depended on.
I love that.
So to feel significant is, recognizing someone's personal milestone or knowing them as more than just an employee. Appreciating them is pointing out not just the task that you appreciate, but the person behind the task, the you in the thank you. Thank you for being the kind of colleague I can always count on. It's about the human, not the task, that really makes the impact. Letting them feel dependent on, allow your employees, your faculty and staff to add value. Just allow them to have that agency and opportunity to add value to the community and invested in, which is letting them know that you are invested in their own personal goals and that you're there to support them through them and that their goals feel like an extension of your goals. Psychologists have this expression, this concept called ego extension. And ego extension is a critical piece of mattering. And what it is allowing you to go beyond yourself. So when you see someone else's goal as your goal, it extends the self. And it's sort of this healthy blending, this healthy interdependence. I am invested in you in whatever goal that you're looking to do. And I'm here to support you, hold you accountable, help you through setbacks, etc. So that is how we make people feel like they matter. It's explicitly acknowledging them.
It seems to me, Jenny, as I'm listening to you talk, that if that's the task, then schools, independent schools in particular, but schools generally, wow, with our mission and with this kind of concept of the ego extension that your goals are my goals, like we all want the same thing. We want healthy, we want thriving, we want these young people to live fulfilling lives and to feel loved and seen. And like that's it feels like the ultimate ego extension, right? In that regard, it seems pie in the sky perhaps, but it would seem to me that it's the reason why education can and should be the most optimistic profession in the world. Because your goals are my goals and we all want the same thing. We want these kids to go and have wonderful, healthy, fulfilling lives. But let's bring it down to earth here, right? Because I work in a school and I'm thinking to myself, and listening to myself right now, let alone you, and I'm thinking there are likely educators who will ultimately read this and think that the real problem is not that they don't matter. It's that we put too much at stake. There's too much burden on teachers that what they do or don't do matters too much. The stakes are too high. It's unreasonable to expect anyone to function well under that much pressure and scrutiny. And so what would you say to them?
Yeah, exactly. I would say that educators today are living in a paradox, that they are both indispensable to everyone and yet somehow overlooked. They are never prioritized. In the classroom or at home, as a teacher, a parent, a caregiver, you are the glue holding everything together. You are critical to those around you. And yet your needs too often are rarely acknowledged, let alone met. Too often, teachers are simultaneously in the middle of everything and on the periphery, at the center, but coming last. So, what I would say to them is that true mattering requires a healthy balance between mattering to ourselves and mattering to others. So, how do we do this? How do we create that balance for educators? Well, I'll tell you, as a culture, we have been sold a bill of goods by the multi-billion-dollar wellness industry to just download this meditation,
Yeah.
bubble bath, light a candle, and you'll be resilient.
Yeah.
Those are excellent tools for reducing stress, but they do not build up resilience. So what does? We started this conversation here. Decades of resilience tell us that our resilience rests on the depth and support of our relationships. So how do we build those relationships? It's not that the teachers and the parents in these independent schools don't have friends. It's that so often they don't have the time or the bandwidth to invest in these friendships so that they can be sources of support when they need them. I often talk about this, we're told to put on our oxygen mask on first, but what this is saying, what this research is saying is deeper than that. It's saying find one or two or three people in your life who know you intimately, who can see when you are struggling, who can see when you are gasping for air, and who will reach over and put that oxygen mask on for you. That is a very different level of support than we normalize in today's busy culture. So how do we carve that time out? There was a pilot study done by Sonia Luther at the Mayo Clinic, and it was a simple intervention of busy medical practitioners who were also mothers who were stressed out, reporting high levels of stress and burnout. And what she did was she formed these small groups of roughly 5 or 6 busy women who would meet once a week for 1 hour, where they would talk about what they were going through. It wasn't a complaint session. It wasn't a therapy session. It was a place to feel seen and heard and valued and validated. And what Sonia Luther found was that these women, not only did none of them drop out, that after the 12 weeks, they reduced significantly lower levels of stress and even tested lower levels of cortisol, the stress hormone.
Wow.
And so, again, building these relationships does not require a ton of time. It requires intentional time, carving out that time the way you do all the other things in your life, the dentist appointment. Carve out that 1 hour in your calendar at least a week. We often say children need a sturdy adult in their life to thrive. Well, sturdy adults need sturdy adults too. And so find those sturdy adults and support yourself. When life feels overwhelming, I often remind myself of psychiatrist Ned Hallowell's simple but powerful mantra: never worry alone.
Mm.
Asking for support isn't a weakness. It is a profound way to strengthen our resilience. So, Tara, I know you and your colleagues have been very intentional. What have you done at Hewitt to build a culture of mattering?
It definitely has been a we. For starters, we have made it an explicit strategic priority. As we look at the research on educator well-being, we've made it a explicit strategic priority for this school year to amplify our positive employee culture by enhancing systems, events, communications, all of which recognize and celebrate the excellent work of our colleagues so that they feel seen and heard and truly valued. And we actually published that as an explicit strategic priority for the year so that our colleagues, our faculty and staff knew that this is what we were committing to, and we wanted them to hold us accountable for it and participate in it. And so how have we done it? Well, one of my absolute favorite things to do, and we're talking on a Friday, and so it just happened every Friday morning, I'd have a standing huddle with my leadership team, and we sit in a circle in my office. And we have a running agenda. And the first thing we have on that running agenda is something that we developed together called the Just Because spreadsheet. It's a very simple spreadsheet. It's got every name of every employee sorted by the leadership team manager. And our job is to identify between, 2, 3, 4 employees every week caught in the act of doing great work and lifting it up, telling that story to the leadership team, making it very visible. And then the action step is so simple, but it has been so profound. We have a member of the leadership team who is not that employee's manager write a very detailed recap of the story that was just told to the entire leadership team with the leadership team copied on that email to acknowledge that employee's exceptional performance and exactly what they did and the specificity of what they did to advance our mission and to make us better. And the responses that we are receiving from these colleagues, it's almost like it's ripping a page right out of, Morris Rosenberg's Mattering research. It's kind of like, I can't tell you what this means to me. I am literally crying right now out of gratitude. I feel so seen. I feel so heard. I feel so honored to work at a place that takes the time to really see what I have to bring. And it's so beautiful. I mean, it's literally one of the easiest things to do. But unless you actually design a system that resets the default, and so here I'm going to quote one of my favorite quotes from James Clear, right? We do not rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. We've created systems at our school because we all get so busy, but we always complete the just because spreadsheet because we're realizing that these acts of witnessing, bearing joyful witness to people doing their best work is so important to a sense of mattering. It also really helps with retention of our best employees. And whenever you shine a spotlight on great behavior, guess what? They'll do it again and again and again. So that's one way. We've also launched this pretty informal but also impactful process that doesn't matter who you are, walk the classrooms, and whenever you go into a classroom, you bring a Post-it note and you make sure that you leave behind the teacher just a couple of observations of spotlighting things that were just joyous and amazing. And it's not about the performance management. It's just about, hey, I see you. I see you. So the Post-it process, in some ways it sounds so silly, but we've really institutionalized these things and they're spreading. We've also built into all faculty meetings the showcasing of high quality work and accomplishments. We're sharing wins at the beginning of all faculty and staff meetings just to set the tone. And then we've also we've heeded the call from our teachers that they want more growth-oriented feedback. And I love this quote. I studied Irish literature. William Butler Yeats wrote, "We are happiest when we are growing." And that's true for teachers. They want to grow. And so we've implemented an enhanced faculty evaluation process to ensure that teachers receive really high quality, actionable feedback. And we have a team of 2 visiting classrooms, and we invite the teachers to reflect with us on their class. And it has been so wonderful. It gives admin a sense of what's going on in every classroom, helps teachers feel seen and valued. It's great. One thing that has been, again, so simple, but I can't tell you how contagious the joy is whenever we do it. At all monthly faculty and staff meetings, we start with life celebrations, and it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't have to be a wedding or a birth, although sometimes it is. It doesn't have to be a degree. It can be, I welcomed this new puppy into my apartment. I finished a marathon. I climbed a mountain. I visited this country. I checked something off of my bucket list. I got a publication in a journal, and we have photos and stories, and we tell them. And I always love to sit in the back and watch the impact on the faculty and staff. And when I tell you at 3:30, after a long day of teaching and dealing with kids, these teachers are sitting there and they are smile ear to ear, getting a little window into the lives of their faculty and staff colleagues. Everybody is just so happy for each other.
I
And
have to say, this is really, I'm literally taking notes. This is really a master class in memory.
oh,
I love it. It's
So-
really a masterclass.
So thank you. It's like that invisible glue that binds us all together in a community, because schools are fast-moving places, right? And so it's something to say at the lunch table. Oh my gosh, I loved seeing the photo of your son's wedding in India. Oh, he and his bride were so beautiful. Like, and you hear these things. Or when passing somebody in the hallway, it just makes us feel connected to each other. You know, another thing that we've really done, and I'm proud of my leadership team, is we're really leaning into an open door policy. In my case, you know, you don't have to be so formal about it. Just drop in. If you have a question, just drop in. In my case, I'm lucky to have a dog that loves to cuddle in my office, and it is far better than a bowl of candy. I have Otis right here. I don't know if have you met Otis yet?
I have such a cutie.
Otis. Yeah, he's a cutie. And, you know, there are teachers who come in, there are kids that come in. I was meeting with the seniors even for lunch, and half of them just wanted to sit on the floor because of my dog. And it just sets a tone of like, we're all human here. I mean, ironically, dogs help us make us, I think sometimes make us feel more human, because they're not thinking about themselves. They're wolves. They think of the pack. They just want to be around people, right? And we're also at our most recent professional development day, I just called about 5 parents, and not the normal spokespeople of the school. And I said, hey, I know you're really happy with the school. Would you mind just putting a selfie view on video and just saying a few words about how what we do impacts your daughters and your life? And I played 5 really raw, authentic videos right off of the phone on the screen at Professional Development Day. And the parents were all tearing up when they were recording what the faculty and staff at Hewitt do for them. And the faculty were tearing up. I mean, it's just these little kind of like, how do we make sure that we give parents the opportunity to express genuine appreciation and gratitude? And then we did something at the very end of the school year last year that I will always do. And my colleagues almost talked me out of it because everyone's exhausted in June and everyone just cannot wait. There are memes about how teachers want to sprint out of schools at the end of the school year. I'm sure you've seen them.
Yes.
And I was like, no. I get the sense that these colleagues want to make sure that they're celebrating each other's good work. And so we just opened it up at the very end, the last faculty meeting on the last day before everyone left. We just said, we just wanted this to be a space before we all go away for the summer, for you to put a story into this space where every faculty and staff member can hear what your colleague did. That was amazing. And you just want to make sure everyone knows about it. Oh my gosh, we could have gone on for like 4 more hours. We had to cut it off. And then when we cut it off, we noticed something. And the leadership team was looking at each other like, we've never seen anything like this. People just wanted to hang out. And we hung out in the gym for like another hour. This is literally, you could go off on summer vacation or you could stay here in the school.
That's amazing.
It was amazing. And it was such an eye-opener for me. Like, people are hungry. They're hungry for this. And then 2 other things. They're I think slightly less, maybe less inspiring, but perhaps no less impactful. We started shifting to quick pulse surveys with our teachers, just to say, hey, how's the frequency of meetings? How's the agenda? How is that for you? What was that? And so we actually ended up canceling 3 consecutive Wednesday meetings in October because we heard in the pulse survey that between curriculum nights and admissions opens houses and all, the teachers were saying, hey, this is a lot. And it would be great if you could give us some more time back. And we said, hey, we heard this loud and clear. We're going to cancel these meetings. And the responses were so appreciative. It's like, thank you for hearing us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for clearing the runway when it's cluttered. Like, that's a way to show people that their experience matters and that we're actually paying attention. And I think you've heard me quote Simone Weil. I love this quote from her, right? That attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. And so the last thing is we also have belonging sessions in our professional development days. These are self-organized opportunities for downtime and playtime. There's pickleball, crocheting, retro video games, which is very popular, by the way. Go walk in the park, the power of journaling, all that. And it's just a way for people to feel a sense of belonging and mattering. So, and then last but not least, I think that during the pandemic, the small gestures just went a really long way. So the surprise coffee run, the cupcakes at a faculty meeting, et cetera, all of it really matters.
I love that. I think everything you just said was a masterclass in rolling out mattering. I'm going to add one more to it, which is, every teacher I know, my mother was a teacher for 30 years, go into the profession for passion. But we are now tasking our educators with a passion tax where, it's not enough. Just having passion in a job is not enough. We need to really connect them with their impact. You do that when you show them the videos, when you, all the ways you just talked about showing impact. One other way that I think could be useful that I learned about from a mental health coaching company called Better Up is this idea of a mattering map. So think of 3 circles, one inside the other, concentric circles. You could do this for any member of your staff. You could do it at reviews. You could do it just any time of the year and sort of put them in the middle, small middle circle with their name and maybe some adjectives to describe them: empathic, creative, dedicated. Then in the next circle, talk about the teacher's direct impact on others, the students, the colleagues, the parents. Try to interview people and get stories. The student that they turned around because of meeting with them once a week for 2 months, or the parent that was going through a hard time that you helped add more support for that family. And then the final thing is the direct impact that that person has on the school itself, the school values. How did they impact those values? So really explicitly showing people their impact. It's how we fill them up beyond purpose. Purpose is no longer enough. You really need to know your impact to buffer against burnout.
I love that.
So I think maybe where we'll wrap up here is talking about, is there anything we can do to build the mattering between parents and faculty? I have had it.
Yes.
I noticed in my visits with schools that parents are increasingly looking to schools, not just for educating their kids, but also for pastoral support for themselves. Modern life and the erosion of community is leaving so many families feeling isolated. So what are some of the ways that we can build back make these communities sort of cultures of mattering for literally everyone, student, educator, parents? What are some of the things you've done?
Yeah, it's such an important question, especially coming out of the isolation of the pandemic years, that I think is again, it's part of this long tail. I think that a lot of people are still feeling it. And one of the poems that has actually been something that I have turned to throughout the last 5 years and has gotten me through the last few years is the prose poem by Margaret Wheatley called Turning to One Another, in which she writes, "Talk to people you know, talk to people you don't know, talk to people you never talk to. Remember, you don't fear people whose story you know, and real listening always brings people closer together." And one of the challenges that I find over the last few years is that parents and faculty are just not spending enough time together. They're not together in the same space, forging those trust-based relationships that benefit the children that are at the center of that relationship. And so for us at Hewitt, having in-person curriculum nights that they've proven not only beneficial for parents to meet their teachers, but we also have built in a social reception in our gym. There's nice food, there's some wine, and it's in the gym. And so at the end of the evening, parents and teachers and admin, they can spend time with one another in a way that's less formal and more social. They're building bonds, they're bringing us closer together so that when something, not if, when something goes sideways, as will happen with a child when they are in school, parents and teachers have built up that emotional bank account, and they're willing to pick up the phone and give one another the benefit of the doubt to stay in relationship, to keep turning toward one another instead of away from one another. So I think for us, just keeping those connection points in person are key. And we've also offered to meet parents to go for walks in the park instead of having a phone call or an email exchange or a Zoom. Somehow when two people are walking together in the same direction, it can really make a difference in terms of feeling a sense of partnership and alignment. And it's great for faculty and for parents to just go out to the park, get in some nature, enjoy nature, get a few steps. And it's been a real gift for our homeschool partnership. So those are just a couple of ways that we've invested in that.
Amazing. Tara, thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of NAIS Member Voices, The Conversation. You can read this conversation, excerpts from past and upcoming Member Voices episodes, and more in every issue of Independent School Magazine. You can also find some related NAIS resources from this episode by visiting nais.org/membervoices. Keep an eye on that page for information about past and upcoming episodes. Okay, now for the exciting news. Starting July 28th, we'll be doing something a little different. We'll be celebrating 100 episodes of Member Voices with 5 bite-size episodes compiling responses to key questions from all of our past seasons. To kick things off, tune into the July 28th episode where past guests discuss their career journey and answer the question, was this always the plan? Please be sure to subscribe to Member Voices wherever you get your podcasts so that you don't miss an episode. And go back and listen to previous episodes you might have missed. If you have feedback for us, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform to let us know how we're doing. You can also send us your thoughts and suggestions on what you'd like to hear on a future podcast by emailing membership@nais.org.